In 19th century London, bodies were buried so quickly that sometimes the ground didn't even have time to settle. Cities grew. Diseases killed thousands. Cemeteries overflowed. And you were the one digging. Night. A damp fog drifted between the tombstones. The lantern trembled in your hand. You stuck your shovel into the ground, and you felt as if the soil beneath you was alive. Not because of fantasy, because of the reality of the time. In Victorian London, the fear of being buried alive was so widespread that people installed alarm bells in coffins. Sometimes they were heard. Sometimes they weren't. You worked deeper. The darkness swallowed the sound, and every movement of the soil made your heart stop. Now imagine, you were alone among hundreds of fresh graves, and the ground under the shovel suddenly trembles. Could you continue digging? This is not a horror story. This is history. Subscribe to the channel if you are ready to experience the real past with us. A lantern in the fog. You wake up before dawn, when the darkness doesn't recede, it just changes hue. The room is cold, as if the dampness of London has seeped through the brick and settled on the blanket. Somewhere behind the wall, water drips. Somewhere below, someone is coughing, long, exhausting, as if each breath is being lent to them. You lie still for a few seconds. Your fingers search for the edge of the blanket, pressing it closer to your throat, but it doesn't get any warmer. In your head is the simple rule of this city. If you don't get up, the city will move on without you anyway. And then you will be left behind, along with those no one is looking for anymore. You sit down. The floorboards groan softly. Your shoes stand by the bed, dark, damp, as if they've never been dried. You blindly tighten your laces because you're used to it. On the table is a piece of bread, bitten off yesterday, and a mug of water that smells of metal. When you go outside, the air immediately clings to your lungs. London doesn't have fresh air. It has a mixture. Coal smoke, fog, the smell of raw brick, horse sweat, street garbage, and another smell you never name out loud. It's impossible to hide. It's not always strong, but it's always there, like a memory that doesn't ask permission. The gas lamps are still burning, their light yellowish, weak, and the fog makes a soft, ghostly crown around each luminous circle. You walk quickly, your head tucked into your shoulders. In these parts, morning doesn't begin with birdsong. It begins with people checking to see if their doors are still in place. You work in a cemetery. Not the beautiful, well-kept one, where rich families put up marble angels and book the best spot. Yours is different. It's old, squeezed by houses and narrow streets, as if the city has gradually eaten it up from all sides. The tombstones here are crooked. Some of the inscriptions have been erased by rain and time, and now the stone seems ashamed of its own history. The paths are broken, the grass grows in patches, and the ground here is strange. You learned a long time ago not to think about what's under your feet. On the way, you pass a bakery. It already smells warm, and it seems unfair. You pass a tavern, from which a man with empty eyes emerges. You pass a woman holding a child so tightly that she's afraid the city will steal her even in broad daylight. And then, the gate. They're heavy, made of dark metal with rust stains. Someone had painted them once, but the paint had peeled off. You pushed the gate with your shoulder, and it creaked as usual, and the sound echoed inside you. Some places have their own music. A cemetery is a solid instrument played by the wind. A window in the gatehouse is lit. There's someone already there. That's good. It's worse when you arrive first. An empty cemetery in the fog is not the kind of place you want to listen to your own thoughts. "You're late," the voice says. You enter, and the warm air of the gatehouse hits you in the face like a blow. Inside, it smells of smoke, wet wool, and cheap tea. Sitting at the table is a man with a face that could have been carved from wood. Rough, patient, and unimaginative. His name is Hugh. He's 10 years older than you, but he seems 100 years older. That's how this job works. "I'm not late. I came just in time," you say, taking off your gloves. Hugh chuckles. There's a list on the table. You've always hated lists, not because of the words, but because of what the words mean. "2 today," he says, "and 1 special." You look up slowly. "What's special?" Hugh doesn't answer right away. He takes a sip of his tea, and you can see his fingers shaking a little. Not from the cold. Hugh isn't afraid of the cold. "It's an order from above," he says finally. No questions asked. Closer to the old plot, by the brick wall. You feel your stomach grow empty. The old plot is where the dirt is the worst. It's loose but heavy, and the shovel doesn't dig into it as it should. It's always damp there, even on dry days, and there is a strange silence there. Not the kind that happens at night, but the kind that comes when even the wind doesn't want to touch this place. "Right there," you begin. "I know," Hugh interrupts. "That's why I say, no questions asked. You want money? You dig." In this city, many things can be changed with words, but not this. You take the lantern. You check the glass, the wick, the oil level. Everything is the same as always. You take the shovel. Your hands automatically find familiar places on the handle. The wood is smooth, rubbed with your palms. It remembers you better than some people. You step out into the fog. A cemetery in the daytime and a cemetery in this early morning twilight are 2 different worlds. The fog makes distances seem false. A tombstone that usually stands 10 steps away now seems to appear suddenly, close, like a person who has approached you without making a sound. You walk slowly, choosing a place where the ground won't give way under your feet. You know the facts. You know why cemeteries are overcrowded. You know why in some areas burials are done quickly, sometimes the same day, sometimes the next. You know about outbreaks of disease, about the fear of bad air, about how people hold their noses with handkerchiefs as if this can stop death. You know that the poor don't have time for long farewells. You know that coffins are sometimes made cheap, thin, just to close the case. And you know the worst part. Not everything dies as obviously as it should. You've heard the stories. Everyone in London has heard them. People waking up afterwards. Scratched lids, broken nails, screams no one heard. Some of the stories are exaggerated, like everything in this city. But some of them stick with you because they don't seem like fiction. They seem like something that could have happened, and maybe has happened. That's why some rich people put in special devices, a rope for a bell, a tube for air, clever mechanisms. Not because they believe in ghosts, but because they're afraid of making a mistake. And a mistake in your work isn't just a number on a list. It's a sound that might come from underground. You come to an old section. Here the wall is tall, brick, dark with damp. There are stains on it, as if someone had touched it with wet hands. The ground is almost black closer to the wall. There is no grass here, only sparse weeds. And the smell, it is stronger. Not sharp, not direct, but it is there, like a hint. You place the lantern on a stone so that the light falls down, on the place where the hole should be. You stick the shovel into the ground. The first entry is always the worst. It's like you're crossing a boundary. The shovel goes hard, with a damp sound, as if the earth doesn't crumble, it holds, clings, doesn't want to give in. You pull out the first layer. The earth is heavy, sticky. You throw it aside, again and again. The rhythm comes gradually, like a prayer you don't like, but know by heart. The creak of the shovel, the damp knock of the clods, breathing in the fog. Somewhere far away, a crow caws, once, briefly, as a sign. You dig and feel the cold rising from below. This is not just the morning chill. This is a different chill, the kind that lives in the land where there is no sun. After a while, you stop to wipe your forehead with your sleeve. The lantern trembles in the wind, and the shadows on the ground move. They slide along the edge of the pit, as if someone is walking around. You force yourself not to look for long. You are not a child. You do not believe in fairy tales. And yet, you pick up the shovel again. The earth here is strange. It seems to spring a little. You feel it in your hands, not as a blow, but as a slight resistance, as if you are digging not into the soil, but into something that does not want to be empty. You crouch closer, listen. Silence. But there is something inexpressive in this silence, like a sound far below the water, like a faint movement that has no explanation. You tell yourself it is just subsidence, moisture, old cavities, underground rat holes. London is a city of holes. You return to work faster, more sharply. When you work quickly, your thoughts do not have time to become loud. And then a small thing happens. The lantern, which stood steadily on the stone, suddenly trembles slightly, as if someone had touched it from below. The flame trembles, the light flickers. You freeze. In the air, fog and your breath. Nothing else. You look at the lantern. It is still there. The stone has not moved. Wind? Maybe. But the wind here is weak and even, not in jerks. You slowly move your gaze to the ground at the edge of the hole, and you see a thin, almost imperceptible crack in the soil, where you had just thrown the clods. It was not there a minute ago. It is small, but it is there, and it seems to have opened up. Your heart beats extra hard. You want to back away, but your body resists, as always. You've learned one disgusting thing in this job. Fear doesn't stop you. It just stands by and watches you continue. You lean over, carefully touching the crack with the tip of your shovel. The earth crumbles a little, and you hear a very small sound, not a scream, not a moan, more like a void that answered, like a muffled exhale from the depths. You pull your hand away. At that moment, Hugh's voice comes from behind you. "I told you, old sight." You turn sharply and see him standing a few steps away, holding his flashlight low. His face is barely visible, just the line of his jaw and his cold eyes. "Did you hear?" you ask, not recognizing your own voice. It sounds dry. "I heard a lot," Hugh replies. "The question isn't what you heard. The question is what you do next." He steps closer, looking into the hole, as if assessing the work. As if it's just a hole, just the ground, just the day. That special one, who is he? You ask. Hugh is silent for so long that you begin to hate the fog for listening. None of your business, he says finally. But if you want to live longer, don't talk about it in the tavern, and don't listen when others talk. And if you swallow your words. What if I come across something that shouldn't be here? Hugh leans closer, and you suddenly see that he's more tired than usual. In London, he says quietly, most things shouldn't be here. But they are here. Do you understand? You nod, even though you don't want to. Hugh takes a step back and throws a curt, "Finish the hole. They should have the first one by noon." You're left alone with the dirt again. You stand over the hole and look down. The darkness below is thicker, as if the light of the lantern doesn't reach there, as if there's a boundary beyond which light doesn't pass without permission. You pick up the shovel. The first move is the hardest. You throw away another clod of earth, then another, and another. The rhythm returns. Your breathing evens out. But now you're not just working with your hands, you're working with your ears. Every sound seems suspicious. Every pause is dangerous. And somewhere deep inside you, a thought arises that's colder than fog. If the soil moves, then what exactly is moving? You keep digging, because in this city, sometimes there's only one way to find out the answer. And that way is to go deeper. List and silence. You keep digging, move after move. The shovel goes into the ground. You press your foot against the edge. You feel the damp mass give way. You pull it out. You throw it away. You repeat. The old site doesn't like to be rushed. Everything here is harder than it should be. It's as if the earth remembers every layer, every box, every mistake. You stop only when the hole is almost up to your chest. The edges are dark, damp. The air is thicker down below. The lantern gives light, but it slides along the walls, not penetrating deeply. You look down, and you feel it again. A faint, almost imperceptible feeling that the space below you is not empty, not occupied, not filled, just restless. You push the thought away. There are many reasons why the earth behaves strangely in London. After the 1830s, the city began to choke on its own dead. Cemeteries overflowed. Graves were dug shallowly, sometimes several in one place. The ground sank, settled, exposed old layers. Sometimes rain washed bones to the surface. This is not a horror story. This is statistics. You know these things. You live among them. You hear footsteps from above. How many? Hugh's voice sounds muffled, as if he's speaking through a wall. Almost enough, you answer. He comes closer, looks down, is silent. Deeper, he says finally. No mistakes today. You sense something more in his words than a simple demand. You said special, you remind him quietly. Hugh doesn't look at you. He looks at the wall, at the dark brick, where the moss has grown as if it has a life of its own. The body was brought in last night, he says. No witnesses, no family. Just a piece of paper with a seal on it. Where from? The hospital. Or maybe not. You hear him sigh. Times are like this, Hugh continues. Doctors are in a hurry sometimes. People are afraid of disease, afraid of infection, afraid of responsibility. And when they are afraid, they bury faster. You feel the words sinking into you more heavily than the earth. You're thinking, you begin. I'm not thinking, he interrupts sharply. I'm working. The silence between you is longer than it needs to be. You lower yourself back into the hole. You dig more carefully now. You listen. Each blow of the shovel seems louder. And then a sound, barely audible. Not from outside, not from the gatehouse, not from the street, from below. You freeze. Hugh above stops moving too. "Here?" you whisper. He doesn't answer. You lean closer to the wall of the pit. You press your ear to the damp earth. The cold penetrates your skin, your bones. And again, a very soft, dull knock. One, a pause. Another. Your heart beats faster than your mind. "They're rats," Hugh says too quickly. "There's a lot of movement here." But you know the sound of rats. It's small, bustling. And this, it's rhythm. Slow, conscious. You push yourself away from the wall, stand up. "If that—" "Don't say it," Hugh interrupts sharply. "Don't say it." He descends into the pit with you. It's cramped between the two of you. The lantern is between you now, the light hitting the damp earth. "Listen carefully," he says quietly. "If we're wrong, if someone was not quite—" He swallows his words. "So what?" you ask. "This isn't the first time." You look at him. He doesn't look away. In Victorian England, the fear of being buried alive wasn't just an urban legend. People wrote wills with instructions, asked to wait a few days, checked their pulse in several ways. Some ordered special safety coffins with alarm mechanisms. And you suddenly realize these things don't happen without a reason. The knock repeats, closer this time. You look at the wall of the pit. Where the soil is a little darker, there's a slight vibration. It's barely noticeable, but it's there. Hugh raises the lantern higher. "If this is subsidence, it doesn't work that way," you whisper. He's silent. And then there's a long sound from below, like something sliding down a tree. Low, slow. You feel a chill run down your spine. "We haven't buried anything yet," you say. "There shouldn't be a coffin there." Hugh looks down, as if trying to see through the ground. "Old burials," he says. "Maybe we've come across an old lair." But even he sounds like he's convincing himself. You kneel down and carefully start to scrape the side of the pit with your hands. The ground is sticky, cold. Your fingers slide, but you feel something hard. A tree. Dark, damp, old. You look at Hugh. "We had nothing here," you say. "Old site," he repeats, but his voice is quieter now. You clear some more dirt. The boards, the edge of the lid. And then a clear, dull thud from inside. You both freeze. You look at Hugh. He looks at you. No one speaks. And in that silence, it becomes clear. If this is what you're thinking about, then every minute counts. But if it's not that, if it's just an old lair, an old tree cracking under the weight of time, then you'll just look crazy. And in 19th century London, crazy people don't live long. Another thud. Harder. Now you can't pretend it's a coincidence. You slowly place your hand on the damp lid, and you feel, very faintly but clearly, an answer from inside. Your heart is pounding so loudly, you're afraid it'll drown out the next sound. "If we open it," you whisper. Hugh closes his eyes for a second. "If we open it," he says, "we can't pretend we didn't hear anything anymore." You look at the lantern, at the dark ground, at the old wall, at the sky that doesn't even lighten, and you realize, today you're not just digging. Today, you're deciding what's scarier, hearing the truth or burying it back. Lid. You don't move right away. Your palm is still on the damp wood. Through the thin layer of soil, you can feel the hard surface, old, swollen with moisture. The lantern between you casts a yellow light down, and the shadows from your shoulders stretch along the walls of the pit like two more silent witnesses. The knock doesn't come again. This is almost worse. "Tell me it's just wood," you say quietly. Hugh doesn't answer. He's looking where you are. His face seems carved from stone, but his eyes are alive, and there's no certainty in them. You slowly remove the dirt from the edge of the lid. Your fingers are numb with cold, but you keep going, layer after layer. The damp earth shifts, revealing more wood. It's dark, and in places it's cracked. This isn't a new coffin. Not from this year, not from the past. Old layer. You swallow air. In the old parts of London's cemeteries, people often buried several people in the same grave. Years later, when space was scarce, old coffins might be lowered deeper or simply dug side by side, touching previous burials. The earth mixed with wood, bones, cloth. No one kept accurate records. You know that. But knowing doesn't mean being ready. "If it's an old burial," Hugh says, "we'll just move it deeper. That's all." "And if not?" He looks at you for a long time. "Then we're too late." The word hangs in the air. Too late. You touch the lid again, and suddenly, very faintly, almost like a pulse, you feel a vibration. Not strong, but not random. You pull your hand away. "Again," you whisper. Hugh quickly kneels down beside you. He presses his ear to the tree. You can see his jaw clench. Silence. Then a dull, slippery sound, like something moving on the inside surface. Hugh slowly raises his head. "Crowbar," he says. You don't argue. He stands up, offers you his hand, and you both climb out of the hole. The world seems different when you're standing on the surface after being so close to something unknown. The fog is thicker. The air is heavier. Hugh walks quickly to the gatehouse, not looking back. You stay by the hole for a moment. You look down. The lid is just visible through the dark earth. And you suddenly think, if there is someone there, they are in complete darkness. No air, no time. A few minutes later, Hugh returns with a crowbar. The metal shines in the light of the lantern. He throws it to you. "If we open it, you look first," he says. "Why me?" "Because you heard first." It sounds like a sentence. You go down into the hole again. This time it is even tighter. You insert the end of the crowbar under the edge of the lid. The wood is soft from the moisture, but it still holds. "Ready?" Hugh asks. "No." "Yes." You push. The tree creaks. The earth crumbles from above, falls on your shoulders, into your collar. You push again. The crowbar goes deeper. The lid gives way a few millimeters. And then, from inside, a sharp, desperate blow. You both shudder. This is no longer a coincidence. This is a rhythm. 3 quick strokes. Pause. Another. You feel your hands grow weak. "This is," you begin. "I know what this is," Hugh says quietly. He looks at you as if not only the fate of the person inside is being decided, but your own as well. In Victorian England, doctors didn't have modern methods of determining death. They checked the pulse on the wrist. They held a mirror to their lips. Sometimes they waited hours. Sometimes they didn't. Especially during outbreaks, when hospitals were overcrowded and the fear of infection made decisions faster. You know this. But knowing, again, doesn't mean being prepared to hear it from underground. Open it, Hugh says. You press harder with the crowbar. The wood cracks. One edge of the lid lifts a few inches. A sharp sound erupts from inside. Not a scream, but a hoarse intake of air that is lacking. The smell hits your face, heavy, damp, confined. You jump back, but you don't get out of the hole. Hugh grabs the edge of the lid and jerks it higher. And you see. The darkness inside is thick. The lantern shines at an angle, and at first you can only make out a shape. Then a face. A person. Eyes open. Mouth half open. Hands are torn to the point of bleeding at the fingertips. Nails broken. Skin damaged. But the scariest thing is the chest. It moves. Barely noticeable, but it moves. You freeze. Time is compressed to a single point. The man inside is staring straight at you. His eyes are glassy, disoriented. His lips are moving, but no sound comes out. You feel something inside you, torn between fear and action. He's alive, you whisper. Hugh is already descending deeper, pulling the man by the shoulders. You help. The body is heavy, cold, but not dead. You pull him out of the coffin and carefully place him on the ground of the pit. He coughs, muffled, slowly. Air enters his lungs with a wheeze. You look at his face. Young, not old. A face with no signs of decay. Only fear. Pure, raw fear. How long has he been there? You begin. Enough, Hugh says. The man suddenly grabs your wrist. His fingers are weak but desperate. He tries to say something. You lean in closer. He gasps. They knew. You look at Hugh. Who? You ask. But the man is already closing his eyes. He's not dying. He's just passing out. The fog around him seems thicker. The cemetery is silent. And you realize this isn't the doctor's mistake. This is something else. Something someone wanted to hide. You look at the old coffin, at the dark wall, at the hole you dug for someone else. And for the first time all morning, you don't feel afraid of the earth. You feel afraid of people. Because if he was buried alive, and they knew, then someone would expect him not to come back. But he did. And now you are a part of it. Those who hurry. You look at his face as he lies on the damp ground beside the open coffin. The mist settles on his cheeks, mixing with sweat and dirt. His chest rises and falls unevenly, with pauses that are more frightening than the wheezing itself. This is the first time you've seen a man who has returned from a place you usually only send. Hugh looks around. Pick him up, he says quietly, and quickly. Where to? To the gatehouse. He can't be seen here. You don't argue. You lift him carefully. The body seems heavier than dead because it resists. Barely noticeable, but alive. His head hangs over your shoulder, and you feel warm. Not ghostly. Real. As you emerge from the pit, you look back. The open coffin remains below, a black mouth in the damp earth. You know, this is not the end. The warmth in the gatehouse seems unnatural. The fire in the small stove crackles, as if it doesn't understand what has happened. You lay him on the bench. Hugh takes off his outer clothing, simple, but not poor. He is not a beggar, not nameless. Look at his hands, Hugh says. You look. The fingers are torn off. The nails are broken. There is a piece of wood under the nails. He tried to get out. You swallow. How long can a person, you begin? Hours, Hugh answers. Sometimes longer, if air gets through. If the coffin is not airtight. You know that. The newspapers have written about cases where coffins have been opened for reburial, and bodies have been found in unnatural positions. Scratched lids, contorted faces. People weren't afraid of death. They were afraid of waking up after it. The man on the bench shudders. His eyes open slowly. He looks up at the ceiling, then at you. Where? He whispers. You're safe, you say, though you're not sure. His gaze focuses. They closed, he gasps. I heard the nails. You feel the cold rising inside you again. Who? You ask. He looks at you as if trying to decide whether to trust him. Two, in the dark, he whispers. Not the doctor. Hugh catches your gaze. This isn't about a doctor's mistake. This is about something else. In the 19th century, London wasn't just a city of factories and hospitals. It was a city of debt. A city of people who disappeared. A city where documents could appear faster than the truth. What's your name? You ask. Thomas, he says softly. Thomas, do you remember what happened? He closes his eyes. I was in a room. Dark. Someone said, he's not breathing anymore. I heard, but I couldn't move. And then the cold and the knock, the ground. His fingers clench. They knew, he repeats. Hugh walks over to the table. His hands rest on the wood as if it's holding him back from falling. If it was done on purpose, he says quietly, we shouldn't be here. You look at him. What do you mean? The old site is not used by chance. They put things there that they don't want to show. The silence in the room grows thick. You suddenly realize that if someone wanted Thomas to disappear, they might have assumed that no one would dig deep, that the old layers would remain untouched. But you dug deeper. You feel a strange combination of fear and guilt. What are we going to do? You ask. Hugh looks out the window. It's getting light outside. Morning is slowly but surely approaching. If we tell, they'll ask us why we opened the old grave, he says. If we don't, he might not live another day. Thomas suddenly grabs your sleeve. They'll come back, he whispers. They're checking. The words hang between you. Who are they? You ask. But the answer is drowned out by another bout of coughing. You look at the door of the gatehouse, and suddenly you hear footsteps. Slow, heavy. Not from the street, from the cemetery grounds. Hugh raises his head. We weren't expecting anyone, he says. The footsteps stop at the door. Silence. Then a knock. Not panicky, calm, confident. You feel your heart beating faster. Hide him, Hugh whispers. Where? Under the bench, quickly. You help Thomas slide down. He's weak, but obedient. You cover him with an old blanket. The knock repeats. Open it, Hugh says quietly, as if nothing had happened. You walk to the door, hand on the latch, breathing slow. You open it. A man in a dark coat stands on the threshold. His face is clean, Neat. Not a pauper, not a worker. His gaze glides over you, over the room, over Hugh. "Morning," he says calmly. "We've brought the body." You feel a chill run down your spine. "What body?" you ask. He looks you straight in the eye. "The one that should have been here yesterday." His voice is even, as if he knows, as if he's checking. You stand in the doorway and realize the ground didn't move by chance. Someone expected it to stay closed, and now they've come to make sure it does. The body that was here. You don't move from the door. The man in the dark coat stands calmly, unhurried. Behind him are two bearers with stretchers. The cloth covering the body is damp with fog. The uniform beneath it is motionless. "You're late," you say in a flat voice. "No," he replies, just as flatly. "We arrived exactly on time." His eyes slide past you into the gatehouse. They're not fussy, they're checking. Hugh takes a step forward. "Name?" he asks dryly. The man slowly takes a piece of paper with a seal from his pocket. "Thomas Reed," he says. The world shrinks. You don't turn to the bench. You don't look at the floor. But you know, under the blanket right now lies a man who calls himself Thomas. "A mistake," Hugh says. "He's already buried." The man in the coat tilts his head slightly. "That's why I'm here." The fog behind him seems thicker. It's as if even the air doesn't want to listen to this conversation. "The body was brought in from St. Bartholomew's Hospital yesterday," he continues. "Proof of death. Paper signed. Procedure completed." His gaze grows colder. "We've received word that the grave has been disturbed." Hugh is silent. You feel the tension building in your chest. They know. "An old layer," you say. "The earth has settled." The man looks at your hands, at the dirt under your nails, at the traces of dirt on your clothes. "Did you open the coffin?" he asks. A pause. Every second counts more than words now. "No," Hugh answers first. The man doesn't argue. He just watches. His silence is worse than any accusation. "Then show me the grave," he says. You swallow. "Why?" you ask. "Because if the body was disturbed," his voice remains even, "the responsibility will fall on you." Responsibility. In Victorian London, that word could mean losing your job, or worse. Hugh takes a step to the side. "Follow us." You feel Thomas moving faintly under the pew. Maybe it's just your imagination. Maybe he's trying to breathe more quietly. You step out into the cemetery first. The fog is slowly lifting, but the world is still gray. The hole by the old wall is blackening in the ground like a wound. The man in the coat walks to the edge. He looks down. The open coffin is still there. The lid is pushed back. It's empty. You feel a chill creeping over your body. He looks at you. "Where's the body?" he asks calmly. Hugh doesn't answer. You look down as if you're seeing it for the first time. You begin. "It wasn't there." The lie sounds hollow even to you. The man slowly descends into the hole. His boots dig into the damp earth. He examines the coffin carefully, touches the inside of the lid. And you see him notice the scratches, deep, fresh. His fingers glide over the wood. He's not surprised. "You opened it," he says quietly. "We heard a sound," Hugh says suddenly, "and we checked the old lair. The coffin was empty." The man looks at him. "Empty?" "Yes." "And you didn't report it?" Hugh is silent. You can feel the situation slowly changing. They're not just checking, they're searching. "Who else knows about this?" the man asks. "Nobody," you say. He looks at you for a long moment. "That's good." The words sound like a warning. He climbs out of the hole. His coat touches the ground, but he doesn't notice. "Bury it again," he says. "Deeper." "But the body," you begin. "None of your business." He looks at the pallbearers. "Bring a new one." You feel your heart clench. "New?" you ask. "There must be order in the documents," he answers. "If the first one disappears, another one appears." You look at Hugh. Now you understand. This is not a mistake. It is a system. The person you saved shouldn't have been alive. Her name is already buried in the papers. Her story is finished. And if she shows up again, someone will have to explain. The man in the coat comes closer to you. "You didn't see anything," he says quietly, "and you didn't hear anything." His gaze is cold, but not cruel, more practical. Otherwise, you'll become part of the same story. You feel those words sink deeper into you than any pit. They turn to leave, but before they do, the man stops. "By the way," he says, without turning around, "sometimes the ground doesn't move because someone is alive." He walks away. The fog swallows them up gradually. You stand by the pit, looking at the empty coffin. "What did that mean?" you whisper. Hugh looks at the wall. "It means," he says, "that we are not just diggers now." You understand. You know things you were not supposed to know. And under the bench in the guardhouse lies a man who has already been buried on paper. And if they come back, they will not come with papers. They will come with silence. Papers are heavier than the earth. You don't say anything until they disappear into the fog. The cemetery is quiet again. The tombstones stand as they did. The wall is dark, damp. The pit is open, with an empty coffin below. It all looks as if nothing happened, but you know, it happened. "Bury it?" you ask quietly. Hugh stares at the pit for a long time. "No," he finally says. "Not yet." You return to the gatehouse quickly, but you don't run. Running is confession. Running is fear that can be seen from afar. You open the door. It's darker inside than before. The fire in the stove is almost out. There's silence under the bench. You squat down, pulling back the blanket. Thomas looks at you. His eyes are clearer now. The fear remains, but something else has emerged. Understanding. "They came," he whispers. "Yes," you say. "Did they check?" You nod. He closes his eyes for a moment. "I heard their voices. Still there." "There?" you ask. "Before," he swallows, "before they closed." You sit down next to him. "Where did you work?" you ask cautiously. "In the warehouses by the Thames," he says. "A clerk, checking accounts." Hugh turns to you. "Accounts of what?" Thomas is silent. "Undertakers," he finally says. "Contracts, supplying coffins, transporting bodies from hospitals." The silence in the gatehouse grows heavier. In the mid-19th century, London had dozens of private funeral homes. Some of them worked with hospitals, some with workhouses. Contracts were drawn up quickly because the city couldn't wait. Bodies had to be removed. Paperwork had to be done. Paperwork was everything. "And what did you see?" Hugh asks. Thomas looks at the floor. "A difference," he says quietly. The number of bodies on the papers didn't match the number of carts. Some names appeared twice. Some disappeared. You feel a cold order rising inside you. Not chaos, not horror, a system. "And did you tell anyone?" you ask. "I wrote a letter," he says.
Not to the right person.
He looks at you straight in the eye. "That evening I was called in for clarification." The room was dark. They spoke calmly. They said I was overworked, that sometimes the numbers get mixed up. His fingers grip the edge of the bench, and then it gets really dark. You look at Hugh. "They decided you were already," you begin. "Dead?" Thomas smiles weakly. "Yes, on paper for sure." You feel the logic unfold. If someone dies in the records, their accounts are closed. Their debts are transferred. Their name disappears from the lists. And no one looks for a person who is already buried. But why not just... You don't finish. Hugh is responsible for you. Because a body without papers is a problem, and papers without a body are just a mistake. Thomas nods. "If they find me alive," he says, "they won't fix the mistake." You know what that means. They will fix the source of the error. You. The ticking of the clock in the gatehouse suddenly grows louder. Each tick is a reminder that time moves, even if the earth stands still. "We can't leave him here," you say. "And we can't take him out the gate," Hugh replies. "They might be waiting." You look out the window. The fog is slowly clearing. Beyond the cemetery wall is the city. Noises are beginning to appear. Cartwheels, distant voices, the clank of metal. The city is alive. And the city doesn't know that one of its dead numbers is sitting in the gatehouse. "There's an old way out," Hugh says quietly. You look at him. "Where?" "An underground drain, an old canal. It used to drain into the Thames. It's mostly filled in now, but the passage is still there." You feel an image forming in your mind. A dark tunnel. Water. Rats. Slippery rocks. "Are you serious?" you ask. "If they think he's in the ground," Hugh says, "we have to make him disappear from the ground." Thomas looks at you. "You're taking a risk because of me?" You're silent, because the truth is simple. If they find out you saved him, you're already part of the story. "We're not heroes," Hugh says. "We just don't like being used." You stand up. "When?" "Until full daylight," he says. "In the fog, we're invisible. In broad daylight, we're suspicious." You look at the bench, at the blanket, at the person who was never supposed to wake up. "And the grave?" you ask. Hugh looks at you for a long time. "We'll bury her," he says, "and put a new body in." You freeze. "You want to—" "They're waiting for the paperwork to be in order," he says. "We'll get it in order." You understand. The system works because everyone agrees with its version of reality. But today you've seen a different version. And now the choice is simple. Either you become part of those who close the lids, or part of those who open them.
Suddenly, a cart rumbles in the distance outside. You look at the door. "They'll come back," you say. Hugh nods. "So we have to be ready." You grab your flashlight, and for the first time that day you understand. The earth moves not only from bodies, it moves from lies. And you stand right above it.
Underground. You emerge from the gatehouse first. The fog still hangs low, like a thin blanket over the graves. The world is getting brighter, but not warmer. The cemetery looks almost peaceful. The tombstones are silent. The crows sit still, as if watching. And none of them know that under the pew lies a man who has already been declared dead. "Help him," Hugh says. You turn inside. Thomas tries to sit up on his own, but his body is still weak. You put your shoulder under him. His weight is warm, alive, but fragile. "Quiet," you say, slowly. The three of you emerge from the gatehouse, not toward the main alley, but off to the side, toward the old section where the wall is darkest. There, beyond a few crooked slabs, the ground is uneven, as if it had once been torn up and covered over again. Hugh pushes one of the slabs aside. It's heavy, but there's a hole underneath. Not deep at first, just a dark crack. "An old drainage shaft," he says. "Once the water went to the Thames. Now it's just silt and rats." You look down. The smell rises, sharp, damp. The air is colder than above. The stone is slippery. "Are you sure it's going to pass?" you ask. "If it doesn't, there's no other way." Thomas looks into the darkness. "I've been underground before," he says quietly. "This isn't any worse." His words sound harder than you'd expect. You go down first. The stone steps are narrow, uneven. The lantern in your hand casts light ahead, but it slides along the damp walls, as if afraid to go any deeper. Underfoot is a thin layer of water. It moves slowly, barely perceptible, as if it were breathing. Thomas follows, holding on to the wall. Hugh closes in. When you are at the bottom, the noise of the cemetery disappears completely. Only the dripping water and your breathing remain. You walk forward. The old drainage channels were common in London before the large-scale sewer reforms. After the Great Stink of 1858, the city began to rebuild the system, but the old passages remained, forgotten, partially filled in. You never thought you would have to use them. The passage is narrow. In places you have to bend. Stones protrude. Slime slides underfoot. The lantern trembles in his hand, and the shadows move as if someone is walking beside him. "Far away?" Thomas whispers. "To the exit by the old warehouses," Hugh says, "if it's not blocked up." You don't ask if. Too many things exist only in the conditional these days. You move slowly. Every step echoes. And suddenly you hear a sound. Not water, not a drip. A step behind you. You stop. "Did you hear that?" you whisper. Hugh freezes too. Silence. Then a faint grinding sound, like a boot hitting a stone. Thomas squeezes your hand. He whispers. You raise the lantern higher. The light slides along the wall, across the wet stone, but there's no one in sight. "It's an echo," Hugh says, but his voice sounds less confident. You know the difference between an echo and a presence, and this is a presence. You move faster. The passage narrows. In places you have to walk sideways. Thomas gasps, but he walks. His fear is different now, not underground, but behind him. The sound again. Closer this time. You turn sharply, and at the far end of the passage you see movement. A dark figure. Still. just a silhouette in the dim light. Your heart beats faster. "Who's there?" you ask. No answer. The figure stands, then slowly takes a step forward. The water beneath its feet murmurs softly. "Go," Hugh says sharply. "I'll hold." "No," you answer. "Together." The figure approaches. Now you see a dark coat. Same. The man from the gate. "You forgot something," his voice says calmly. The sound distorts the words, but the meaning is clear. You grip the lantern tighter. "It doesn't belong to you," you say. The man stops a few steps away. "In London," he says quietly, "everything belongs to someone, even the dead." Thomas shudders. "I'm not dead," he says hoarsely. The man looks at him. "On paper, yes." You feel the words cutting through the air. "You can't just—" you begin. "I can," he interrupts. "I have." He takes another step. "You don't understand," he continues. "It's not personal. It's order." You look down the narrow passageway behind him. Back is a dead end. Ahead is darkness and, perhaps, a way out. You understand. If he takes Thomas, the story will be over. But if you go further, you will become enemies of order. The water under your feet moves faster. Does it seem so? "Why?" you ask. "Why him?" The man is silent for a few seconds. "Because he counted," he says finally. Silence. "And what did he find?" you ask. The man smiles faintly. "More than necessary." You feel something resolve inside you. You put the lantern on the ground, and you take a step forward. "Then count again," you say. The man looks at you, and at that moment, somewhere behind, in the darkness of the tunnel, a dull rumble is heard. Stones fall. The passage shudders. The water suddenly starts to move faster. You understand. The old channels can't handle the pressure, and if the wall collapses, no one will get out. The man looks back. For a second, his peace disappears. And this is your chance. "Run!" Hugh shouts. You grab Thomas by the hand, and you rush into the darkness, underground, where order doesn't work, and where the earth can move again. Exit to the river. You run, but you can't hear your own footsteps, only the water that has suddenly come to life. Behind you is the crash of stones. The old canal groans, as if someone is trying to squeeze it into a fist. The lantern in your hand throws light in fragments. Wall, water, shadow, wall again. Thomas stumbles. You catch him by the elbow. "Don't stop," you say. Hugh runs a little behind, looks around. The man in the dark coat doesn't shout, doesn't threaten. He walks quickly, evenly. His figure is not fussy, it is confident. It's more frightening than the scream. The passage narrows. The water rises to your ankles. Somewhere ahead you hear another sound, not the crash of stones, but a dull, rhythmic noise. The river. "Close," Hugh says, panting. "If the exit isn't blocked." You speed up. The wall on the left grows rougher, the old brick jutting out, crumbling in places. You see a dim light ahead, not the yellow of a lantern, but cold, natural. Thomas suddenly squeezes your hand. "He won't back down," he whispers. "He's not one to back down." You know, you've seen it before. The light grows stronger, and suddenly the passage opens into a low, arched opening. Beyond it is a gray expanse, the smell of silt, the mist over the water. The Thames. The water is slow, wide, indifferent. You run out onto a narrow ledge of stone near the shore. The warehouses are visible to the left, dark, silent, not a soul. You turn. The man comes out of the tunnel slowly. He doesn't run, he just walks. The rocks behind him fall again, partially blocking the passage. This is no way back now. There's nowhere to go, he says calmly. You look at the river. The water is cold, deep, unpredictable. Yes, you say. Hugh is already looking at the bank. An old boat is tied with a rope to an iron ring in the wall of the warehouse. Small, but it's holding on to the water. This is crazy, Thomas says. Better crazy than papers, you say. The man takes another step forward. You don't understand, he says quietly. You think this is about one person, but this is about a system. You can't break it. You look at him. Maybe, you say, but today we're going to break it. Hugh is already untying the boat. Hurry up, he says. You help Thomas down. The rock is slippery, the water is dark, the boat is rocking. The man stops a few steps away. If you go, he says, you will never go back to your old life. You look at him for a long time. We will never go back. He is silent. For a moment, he seems to hesitate. Then he makes a sharp movement forward. You kick the boat away from the shore. The water accepts you immediately. The boat sails a few meters away. Hugh grabs the oars. The man stops by the water. He doesn't jump. He doesn't shout. He just watches. His figure slowly fades into the mist. The Thames absorbs the sound of your oars. The water is cold, heavy. The fog swallows the warehouses. Thomas sits, his arms folded. Where are we going? He asks. Hugh looks ahead. South. Away from this site. Away from the papers. You look back. The shore disappears. The cemetery is behind you. But the thought remains. If they were able to bury a man alive, how many more buried exist only in documents? The Thames moves slowly. The city wakes up. And you understand. The earth did not move because of ghosts. It moved because of the truth that they tried to bury. Now that truth is sitting next to you in the boat. And London does not yet know that one of its graves is empty. The city that never forgets you. Look out at the water as the boat glides slowly through the morning mist. The Thames is wide, gray, indifferent. It has seen more bodies than any cemetery. It has taken in those they didn't want to bury, and those they wanted to bury forever. The oars creak in Hugh's hands. The rhythm is steady. The water separates in circles. Thomas sits silent. His fingers still tremble, but a clarity comes to his eyes. He looks at the banks as if he's seeing the city for the first time. They'll find us, he says quietly. Maybe, Hugh says, but not today. You're not sure, because London doesn't like cracks in its order. You swim closer to the south bank. There are fewer warehouses, more dark alleys and old workshops. Stone steps lead down to the water. No one is waiting. You dock. You help Thomas out. His legs are weak, but he holds on. Hugh ties up the boat. There's one man, he says quietly. A former orderly. He's seen more mistakes than he cares to. If anyone's going to believe it, it's him. And what will he do, you ask? Maybe nothing, but it's better than silence. You walk down a narrow street. The stones are wet. The air smells of smoke and fish. The town is waking up. Someone opens a shop. Someone carries a bucket of water. Someone stares at you for too long. You feel every look. Thomas stops suddenly. If I show up, he says. They won't just correct the papers. They'll say I'm crazy. You look at him. They can. They'll say I was delusional, that I don't remember, that I'm sick. In the 19th century, the word insane could close any story. A person could be sent to an asylum without trial if a few signatures confirmed their danger. The papers again. That's why we need witnesses, you say. Hugh nods. You stop at an old building with narrow windows. The sign is worn away, but you can tell it was once a doctor's office. Hugh knocks 3 times. The door opens slowly. A middle-aged man, with tired eyes and sleeves rolled up to his elbows, looks at you intently. "Morning," he says. "We need help," Hugh replies. His gaze shifts to Thomas and pauses. "He doesn't look dead," the doctor says dryly. "He's already been buried," you answer. Silence. The doctor steps aside. "Come in." Inside smells of alcohol and old paper. Table, shelves of jars, metal tools. Thomas sits down. The doctor examines his hands, eyes, listens to his chest. "Signs of suffocation," he says quietly. "Limited space, lack of air." He looks at you. "How long?" "We don't know," you answer. The doctor is silent for a long time. "It happens," he finally says. "Rarely, but it happens." "It wasn't a mistake," Thomas says suddenly. "They knew." The doctor looks at him. "Who?" "Those who work with papers." The doctor carefully closes the box of instruments. "If you want me to testify that he is alive," he says slowly, "I need proof." "Scratches in the coffin," you say. "Where is the coffin?" You remain silent, because the coffin is in the cemetery, and the cemetery is under the control of those who have already checked. The doctor looks at you more closely. "You understand," he says quietly, "that if I sign the document, it will be a challenge." "A challenge to whom?" you ask. He doesn't answer. Thomas grips the edge of the table. "If you don't sign," he says, "they will say I don't exist." The doctor looks at him for a long time. "I will sign," he finally says. "But it's just paper." You feel a strange relief. Paper against paper. "And what next?" you ask. The doctor approaches the window. "Next, you have to decide whether you want to fight the city, or just run away from it." Silence. You look at Thomas, at his broken nails, at the skin that remembers the darkness. And you understand. If you run away, the system will stay, and the earth will move again. But if you stay, you will become a target. You can hear the rumble of wheels outside. You look out the window. A black cart is slowly driving down the street. No signs, no unnecessary details. And a man in a dark coat is standing next to him. He is looking straight at the building, and this time he is not in the fog. He is in the light of day. Daylight. You see him through the dirty glass. A man in a dark coat stands next to a black cart, his hands clasped behind his back. His posture is calm, almost patient, as if he is not pursuing, as if he is waiting. The morning light makes everything clearer, and at the same time, more dangerous. "He is here," you say quietly. The doctor does not go to the window immediately. He continues to write. The pen creaks on the paper. "If he is standing open," the doctor says, "then he is sure." Thomas turns pale. He will not come alone. he whispers. He never comes alone. You look again. 2 men stand a little further away, as if by chance. One of them looks away, but does not move. The other adjusts his glove. No one shouts. No one threatens. That is the power. "Do you have a back door?" you ask the doctor. "Yes," he says, "but they might know." You look at the table, at the paper the doctor just signed. "Give me this," you say. He hands you the document. The ink isn't quite dry yet. You read, "Signs of life. Patient not in a state of death." The paper is thin, but it's heavier than the ground. "If we go out the front door," Hugh says, "they won't attack." "They won't attack," the doctor agrees. "They'll offer help." Thomas closes his eyes. "They'll say I'm dreaming, that I'm confusing events, that I was unconscious." "And you?" you ask. He opens his eyes. "I remember the sound of nails. Silence." You look out the window again. The man in the coat is looking straight at you, as if he knows you can see him. And then he nods slightly, not as an enemy, as an administrator. You suddenly understand. He doesn't think in terms of good or evil. He thinks in terms of order, and you are a mistake in his report. "We won't escape," you say suddenly. Hugh looks at you. "Are you sure?" "If we escape, he'll just rewrite history. Another name, another grave." The doctor listens carefully. "Then you need noise," he says. "Not escape, publicity." You look at him.
Newspapers, the doctor continues. Scandals. The fear of being buried alive is already alive in this city. People are afraid. If there's living proof, they'll listen. Thomas swallows. "They'll say I lied." "Not if you speak in front of a crowd," the doctor says. You feel something shift inside you. This isn't about running away anymore. This is about testifying. "If we leave now," Hugh says, "he'll follow us." "Let's go," you say. You take the paper. You fold it. You put it in your inside pocket. "Ready?" you ask. Thomas slowly stands up. Hugh opens the front door. The light is shining in his eyes. The street is bustling. People are passing by. Some are laughing. Some are pulling a cart. The man in the dark coat is standing there. He doesn't move as you leave. "You made the wrong decision," he says quietly. "No," you say. "We just refused to be silent." His gaze flicks to Thomas. "Do you think the paper will protect you?" "No," you say, "but people can." He smiles slightly. "People believe what's written." "That's right," you say. You walk past him. He doesn't stop, but you can feel his presence behind you. Not as a pursuer, like a shadow. You walk quickly, but not running, to the market, to the noise, to the voices. Because if the earth moves in silence, then the truth must move out loud. And you know. The next step will decide not only Thomas's fate, it will decide whether the city can admit its mistake or bury it deeper.
You step out into the square, where morning is already boiling. The shouts of the merchants, the creak of wooden stalls, the smell of fish, bread, coal. People hurry, argue, bargain. This is the heart of the city. Loud, indifferent, alive. That's why you chose this place, because silence doesn't last long here. "Are you sure?" Hugh asks quietly. You look at Thomas. His face is still pale, his hands are shaking, but his eyes are clear. Not lost, not empty. "If I remain silent," he says, "I will become dead again." You nod. You climb onto a wooden barrel near the shop. The boards creak under the weight. "Listen," you say loudly. At first, no one reacts. You repeat. "Listen! It's about a grave!" The word grave works faster than any call. Several people turn around. Some laugh. Some stop. "Yesterday they opened a coffin in the cemetery," you say, "and they found a living man." The silence doesn't fall immediately. It grows slowly. "He was buried alive." Now people are watching. Some cross themselves. Some say, "Nonsense." Thomas takes a step forward. "I'm here," he says. His voice is hoarse, but loud enough. People look at his hands, at the scratched fingers, at the marks under his nails. The whispers spread faster than the wind. "It's him," someone says. "I heard about it. They say this happens. Doctors are wrong." You see movement in the crowd. A man in a dark coat is standing at the edge of the square. He doesn't shout. He doesn't argue. He just watches. "He has a piece of paper," you say, taking out the document. "The doctor confirmed. He's alive." You unfold the paper. The ink is still dark. People come closer. "Read!" someone shouts. You read aloud. Every word sounds louder than you expected. When you finish, the crowd is no longer indifferent. "And who buried him? Who signed the death certificate? It's a crime!" The words rise like a wave. You see the man in the coat change his expression for the first time. Not fear. Calculation. He takes a step forward. "Gentlemen," he says calmly, "this man has had a severe attack of fever. He was delirious. The documents may have been misinterpreted." You look at him. "He remembers the nails being driven in," you say. The crowd grows louder. "Let him speak! Let him speak!" Thomas raises his head. "I heard them," he says. "I couldn't move, but I heard them." Silence. And then a voice from the crowd. "And my brother? He was buried last year. We didn't see the body." Another. "My sister, too." You see the fear turn to anger. The man in the coat raises his hand, trying to calm you down. "You're letting panic control you," he says. "The city is in order." "Order," you repeat, "or numbers?" The crowd shrinks. The people come closer. The man in the coat understands. He is no longer speaking to 3 people. He is speaking to the square, and the square is not listening to him. He lowers his hand. "You do not understand the consequences," he says more quietly. "We understand the earth," you answer. "It moves when something is buried incorrectly." The words seem to cut through the air. The crowd hums. You see more people appear. A journalist with a notebook. 2 policemen. Traders who have abandoned their stalls. The man in the coat looks around, and for the first time, he does not control the space. He looks at you. "Do you think this is a victory?" he asks quietly. You look at Thomas. "No," you answer. "This is the beginning." He turns and walks. He doesn't run. He doesn't look back. But you know, this is not the end. Because the system doesn't fall with one voice. But today, the city heard. And now every grave can become a question. You get off the barrel. The crowd is still making noise. Thomas is standing next to you, alive. And you understand. You are no longer just a digger. You are a witness. And witnesses in this city are not buried so easily. The earth remembers you. Stand in the square longer than necessary. The crowd slowly disperses, but they don't fall silent. People are talking, quietly, quickly, excitedly. Names, stories, suspicions. Some are already running to the nearest newspaper. Some are vowing to check on a relative's grave. Some are simply looking at the ground beneath their feet, no longer trusting it as much as they used to. You feel a strange silence inside. No triumph, no certainty, just the realization that this is now irreversible. Thomas stands nearby, clutching his coat to his chest. His hands aren't shaking as much anymore. "They won't stop," he says quietly. "No," you say, "but now they'll have to talk." Hugh looks down the street, where the man in the dark coat has gone. "He's not the kind of person who loses in public," he says. "He'll just change his ways. You know that. The system doesn't collapse from noise. It adapts. But there's a crack in it, and you've seen what it looks like from the inside." Later that day, you return to the cemetery, not because you have to, but because this is your place. The fog has returned, not as thick as it was in the morning, but enough to blur the outlines of the tombstones. The dirt by the old wall is already backfilled. The new coffin lies deep. Everything looks right, just the way a city likes it. You walk up to the same hole. The ground is flat, fresh, as if nothing had happened. You squat down and touch the soil. It's cold, still. But you know, the movement wasn't in the ground. It was in the documents, in the decisions, in the people. In the 19th century, the fear of being buried alive was not a fad. It was so real that the newspapers regularly ran stories about cases of mistaken burial. People demanded longer waits before burials. Safe coffins with bells and ventilation were appearing. Doctors argued about the signs of death. The city changed slowly, but it changed. You rise. Now, when you look at the tombstones, you see more than just names. You see questions. How many were buried in silence? How many became numbers that no one checked? How many stories ended only because someone was in a hurry? Footsteps behind. You turn. Hugh is standing a few meters away. "The paper already wrote it," he says. "Alive after burial." People are reading. "And him?" you ask. "Gone." You nod. "Will he come back?" Hugh looks at the ground. "Maybe. But now he knows what we see too." You breathe in the cold air. The city hasn't changed in a day. The cemetery hasn't gotten any cleaner. The papers haven't disappeared. But now there's a name that hasn't been left underground. Thomas. And there are witnesses. You look at the wall where it all began. The cracks in the brick are the same. The moss is the same. But you're not the same anymore. You're not just digging anymore. You're listening. And when the earth seems still, you remember that movement can begin from within. It's not always a knock on wood. Sometimes it's a voice. You pick up a shovel. The sun breaks through the clouds for a moment. Light falls on an old plot, and you understand. This was not a horror story. This was the story of a city that had relied on silence for too long. And one morning, You heard a sound that shouldn't have been there, and you didn't let it go. The earth is still beneath your feet, but you know, it remembers, and so do you.